The new 5th edition Spelljammer rules are coming out in just a couple of weeks, so today we're going to take a look at what the rules for ship-to-ship combat and spelljamming is probably going to look like, so stay tuned. Hi everybody, my name is Justin and welcome to Game On, a show all about tabletop gaming, from RPGs to board games and everything in between. Today is the marking of just a couple of weeks before the 5th edition Spelljammer books come out, and I really want to talk about the Spelljammer Space Combat and what it's probably going to look like. What's really nice is that WotC has already done the heavy lifting using Ghosts of Saltmarsh. Love it or hate it, that is actually partially one of my favorite books in the 5th edition ethos. Not only that are we going to take a look at what I think the Spelljammer official rules are going to look like, but we're also going to talk about the Spelljammer Ship Combat rules that I wrote 4 years ago because I couldn't wait for WotC to come out. So let's get into the Space Combat rules. So unlike 2nd edition Spelljammer, I don't foresee Wizards of the Coast using anything like saves as material, as well as maneuverability classes and armor rating specifically to ship hulls, kind of like how they do with the Galleon, which I have up here on the screen. What I really foresee them using is the stat blocks that we get in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and I kind of see them just filing up the serial numbers and slapping on new names onto these kinds of ships and just giving us a wider array of ships to play with, because these ship rules are actually really cool and I really like them. Now, if you look at the promotional material, you will see that there are going to be minis, meaning that there's probably going to be a little mini war game breaking out at the table every time you have ship-to-ship combat in Spelljammer, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Now first, we are going to take a look at the stat blocks of these ships, and I'm going to use the sailing ship as an example from Ghosts of Saltmarsh. Just pretend that this says Galleon or Space Galleon on it, because I pretty much think that this is going to be exactly how things are going to be done in Spelljammer when it comes to ship combat. So the sailing ship in Ghosts of Saltmarsh gives us what the ship can do in combat and out of combat, which is very helpful because there's a lot of things that you can do with the ship out of combat. But in combat, we're going to take a look at its dexterity, because that is how we're going to look at our initiative orders. So how we take our dexterity is, or our initiative order, is we look at the dexterity, which is going to be a -2 on this ship, and then we are going to add our crew morale plus a d20. So crew morale is usually a +4, and it can be as high as a +10 to as low as a -10. The Ghost of Saltmarsh does kind of a murky job on how to determine crew morale and where it actually is. So let's just assume it's a +4. So you're going to roll a d20, -2 +4, so we're going to just have a straight +2, and that's how we know we're going to go in the initiative order. So you're going to see some things on the stat block that looks different from what a monster stat block might look like, or what one of your animal companion stat blocks might look like, and that is because we can do specific shots as well as called shots and certain actions that we have on the ship. So let's take a look at its HP. We can see that the sailing ship has an HP of 300, it has an AC of 15, and it has a damage threshold of 15. So AC is, standard armor class. You have to hit a 15 to do any sort of hit and roll to damage it. You have 300 hit points, but you're going to notice that you have a threshold of 15. You have to get a 15 or higher to do any damage to this ship, which is something I really like, because if you roll a 14 or a lower on your damage rolls, it signifies a bounce or something else happening to the ship that is not as significant in damage. Bounces do happen. The USS Constitution, which is named Old Ironsides, had lots of bounces because it was made out of a certain kind of wood that just bounced cannonballs right off of it. So bouncing is not something that is just made up, and that's where I really like the idea of a damage threshold. You can also do specific called shots. So imagine you're trying to chase down some Githyanki slavers in one of their ships and you don't want them to move anymore, but you don't want to blow the ship up because they've got slaves, well, you can target specifically their sails, and then you can overcome its AC, its damage threshold, bring its hit points down to 0, and now the ship can't move. So imagine just translating these water ship combat stats into a 3D environment, though it's going to be played on the 2D environment. And that is going to be really, really cool, in my opinion. Not only that, but you also get some really cool crew member actions, well, more like officer actions, kind of as free actions. Within here, you have the first mate, you have the captain, you have the helmsman. They can all kind of do different things, like a full steam ahead, boost the morale temporarily of your crew members, which can help with certain attacks, like advantage and disadvantage. But you're also going to see that there are some standard actions. Specifically, when it comes to the sailing ship, you're going to see that you have 3 actions. And you can do any 3 of the actions that you want on your turn. You have an attack, you can do 2 attacks, you can move once, you can move 3 times, you can attack 3 times. And what that shows is that the bigger the ship, the more crew you have, the more actions you can take on your turn. And you'll notice that they also show you how much actions you can take on your turn when you start losing crew members, because that can happen when somebody, rakes the front of your boat and just rips apart your crew members to shreds. I like that idea because now you don't have to worry about kind of coming up with, as a DM, what can happen and what actions you can take. Second edition Spelljammer did have some rule support that I didn't fully understand when it comes to what you can and can't do as a crew on the ship. But what I really like about these simple standard ship blocks, stat blocks, is that you can take them and stick them onto anything. You want to do a Neogi Death Spider? Well, it might have different weapons, it might have slightly different stats, but this is simple to understand. So this is what space combat is most likely going to look like when it comes to Spelljammer 5th edition. I do want to add that I do believe that they're probably going to give you more rules for facing. If we take a look at Spelljammer's kind of contemporary Starfinder, there are specific rules for facing because you are playing this on a 2D plane. Because you have to play this out on a grid, most likely, and if they are giving you minis, they're probably going to be expecting you to. And the Ghosts of Saltmarsh doesn't really give you a whole lot of rules on how to face your ship. It doesn't really tell you how much movement to sacrifice to face your ship around. So I'm foreseeing specific combat rules to play on a grid, specific to facing, as well as how far you can move forward and how far you can move backwards with engines, without engines, that sort of thing. I do believe that they're just going to kind of fluff up the rules just a little bit more to give DMs a couple more tools to help when it comes to managing battles in space. Hey guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content from Game On, and hit that like button if you like the Spelljammer content so we know to bring you more. Thank you guys so much. So the funny thing is that in 2nd edition Spelljammer, it talks about how the rules are written to be played on a 2D plane because a 2D plane is easier to understand when it comes to ship-to-ship combat. And I actually disagree with that. In my homebrew rules, I don't care about facing because I'm assuming I am on a 3D plane, so to speak. I'm in a 3D environment. Most of you know, who have been following this channel for a while, know that I really like Traveler. I have a soft spot for that RPG in my heart. Traveler is a far distant future sci-fi game with a lot of space combat. And I take some of the space combat rules from that game, and that's how I wrote my own 5th edition Spelljammer rules for ship-to-ship combat, which I'm going to share with you guys right now. First rule about ship-to-ship combat is get rid of the grid. You don't really need that battle grid. All that you need is a column of squares that will kind of show 20-foot increments. And why I'm saying 20 foot is because as of right now, most of the ships and weapons in Ghosts of Saltmarsh are using 20-foot increments, so it's just kind of easier to make those square boxes on your battle mat or your graph paper, just 20-foot increments. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take your battleship mini and you're going to put it at 0, so you're always staying in the same spot. Now you're going to have an enemy that's, let's say, 60 feet away, and you move 20 feet towards it. All you have to do now is move that enemy 1 spot forward 20 feet, so 1 square forward, to signify that you moved closer to it. You don't have to move yourself, you just move that mini closer. With that, you don't have to really worry about everything else. You don't have to worry about a lot of ships in one area. You don't have to worry about where they are in relation to you via northeast, southwest, up and down, because in a 3D environment, it's just always how far away they are from you. It doesn't matter if they're to your right or to your left or to your down, they are still 40 feet away from you. Because in space, even though people think that playing in a 3D environment would make things harder, it's really not. So imagine that you were going up to broadside this person, this ship. Now, in Spelljammer rules and in other games, contemporary games like Starfinder, you would have to move and then face yourself to broadside that enemy. It's not that difficult. You don't really have to do that, because think about if you are trying to get yourself into position to broadside that enemy ship. Really all that you have to do is turn. And because you're in space, there's no friction, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. You can just move. Or let's say that they're on your right side and your left side cannons are all ready to go, but your your right side cannons are not ready to fire. Well, instead of trying to explain how you're doing a 180 clockwise to broadside them, all that you have to do is flip over and now broadside them with your left side, because your left side is now on the right. Because in space, especially in Spelljammers, thanks to artificial gravity, down is always down towards the hole. So your upside down, which was your down before, is now your right side up, and your ship your crew would never even realize that. Like, oh, we flipped upside down? Well, I still feel like I'm right side up no matter where I am. And playing in the 3D environment makes things so much easier because you have artificial gravity. You can just flip upside down and shoot the other way. You don't have to worry about facing, and you don't have to worry about where specific enemies are in relation to you, because you can always assume and say that you can just reorient yourself to face them. Okay, so I've talked long enough about space combat with what the Spelljammer ships are probably going to be like, as well as I've talked your ear off about my own homebrew rules. I'd like to know in the comments what you guys think, what you guys will be doing. Does it sound like what I'm thinking is kind of what's going to happen using these Ghosts of Saltmarsh rules and just translating them into space? Might as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. From the bottom of my heart, my name is Justin. And again, I hope you guys continue to give us a like and a subscribe if you guys like this Spelljammer content. Thank you guys so much, and as always, game on.